Oregon and Washington are on fire, and the United States is now at its highest possible wildfire alert level. Preparedness level 5, the top of the scale, the point at which the nation's firefighting resources are considered fully committed. And a dangerous new threat is arriving this weekend. A major dry cold front is tracking into the inland northwest, with wind gusts expected to reach 50 miles per hour Saturday night. 50-mile-per-hour gusts. Relative humidity dropping into the single digits. Temperatures near 100 degrees. That specific combination, high wind, no moisture, cured fuel, is what firefighters call a worst-case scenario, and it is landing on a region that already has more than 40 uncontained large fires burning across it right now. So let's get right into it, because the numbers today are the story, and the forecast is the reason this can't wait. Today is Saturday, August 1st, 2026. National Preparedness Level 5, the maximum. Here's what you need to know. The National Interagency Fire Center, NIFC, the agency that coordinates the entire country's wildfire response, confirms the following in its situation reporting. The nation is holding at Preparedness Level 5, with roughly 84 large fires actively burning and uncontained across the country. More than 26,000 firefighters and support personnel are committed nationwide, and so far this year, about 4.8 million acres have burned, well above the 10-year average for this date, running at roughly a third more than normal. Preparedness Level 5 is not a phrase to skim past. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 is the ceiling. It is the formal declaration that national wildland firefighting resources are fully committed, that the crews, the engines, the aircraft, and the incident teams are stretched to the point where fire managers are taking emergency measures just to keep operations staffed. It is the system telling you, in its own language, that it is running out of margin. There's no channel name and no drama here, just the official numbers and what the people who fight these fires are actually saying. If that's what you want, subscribe. Now let's walk the map. Oregon is the center of this national crisis. Roughly 30 large fires are actively burning in that single state, more than a third of every large fire burning in the entire country. Around 24,000 Oregonians are under some level of evacuation notice. The most dramatic development is the Bench Fire, 4 miles south of Warm Springs in central Oregon. It has grown to roughly 65,000 acres, a jump of nearly 20,000 acres in a single overnight period. NIF describes its behavior in the language fire crews use for a fire that is not under control: short crown runs, group torching, long-range spotting. That last term matters. Long-range spotting means the fire is throwing embers far ahead of its own front, starting new fires in front of itself, which is exactly how a fire outruns the people trying to contain it. Numerous homes and energy infrastructure are threatened, and the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs have declared a state of emergency. The Grasshopper Fire in the Mount Hood National Forest has grown past 21,000 acres at 0% containment, threatening structures and critical infrastructure. Oregon has now invoked its 11th conflagration declaration of 2026 for that fire, a state mechanism that mobilizes additional firefighting resources, and a number that tells you how relentless this season has been. But the largest fire in the region is on the Oregon-Idaho border, the Big Grass Fire, southwest of Jordan Valley, which has burned to roughly 303,000 acres. That fire pushed across the state line into Idaho with enough force that Idaho's governor declared a fire disaster emergency and deployed the National Guard. Level 3 Go Now evacuations remain in effect in Owyhee County, Idaho. If you are in the Jordan Valley, Pleasant Valley, or South Mountain area, follow every instruction from the Owyhee County Sheriff's Office without waiting. And in eastern Oregon, the Fox Fire near Huntington earlier this week forced the closure of Interstate 84 for roughly 70 miles between Baker City and Ontario, a major artery, shut by fire. That closure has since been partially lifted, but it's a marker of how far these fires are reaching, beyond the wilderness and into the infrastructure people depend on. Move north into Washington, and 11 large fires are burning uncontained. The largest is the Kaiser Canyon Fire near Nespelem in Okanogan County, which has burned to roughly 129,000 acres at around 29% containment. This is a Tier 1 priority fire, the highest priority category, managed by a complex incident management team with more than 1,100 personnel assigned and a second team mobilizing from Alaska to join the response. NIFC describes its behavior as active, with uphill runs, flanking, and short-range spotting. Numerous structures are threatened, and Level 3 evacuations have been expanding. There's a detail from the Kaiser Canyon command team that I want to read almost exactly because it cuts through everything. Asked about the biggest threat right now, the incident's leadership didn't name a town or a structure. They said the biggest threat is wildland firefighter and public safety. When the people running a 129,000-acre fire tell you their number one concern is keeping their own crews alive, that is the honest measure of how dangerous the conditions have become. The Kaiser Canyon fire has been growing at an average of nearly 12,000 acres a day. It burns actively both day and night because the overnight humidity, the recovery that normally gives fuels and firefighters a break in the dark, simply isn't happening. The fire doesn't rest, which means the crews can't either. Elsewhere in Washington, the Modrite fire in the northeast of the state has burned past 21,000 acres with extreme fire behavior, and 15 structures have already been lost. As of Friday, the state reported more than 1,000 wildfires burning statewide, with over 700 of them east of the Cascades, the dry side, where the danger this weekend concentrates. Now step back and look at what's fighting all of this, because this is the part that Preparedness Level 5 is really about. More than 26,000 personnel are committed nationwide. In the Northwest area alone, there are dozens of large incidents with close to 18,000 assigned personnel, hundreds of crews, hundreds of engines, and a large share of the nation's firefighting helicopters are all in the field at once. And here is the clearest sign of how stretched the system is. When the country runs out of its own margin, it reaches beyond its borders. And it has. A team of specialists from Australia and New Zealand, more than 70 personnel, crossed the Pacific and are now assigned to large fires in the Northwest. On top of that, 4 military C-130 air tankers, equipped with the modular airborne firefighting system, have been deployed, 2 from an Air Force Reserve wing in Colorado, 1 from the Wyoming Air National Guard, 1 from the California Air National Guard, to bases in Oregon and Northern California. Think about what that means. The nation is flying in firefighters from the other side of the planet and pulling military transport aircraft into civilian fire duty. That is not a routine fire season. That is the response you mount when the ordinary system is already at its limit, which is the exact definition of Preparedness Level 5. And it's into that already maxed out situation that this weekend's weather arrives. Here is the forecast, and it comes directly from NIF's own predictive services, the part of the situation report that fire managers watch most closely of all. A major wind event develops across the inland Northwest this weekend. NIFC's language is specific. An unseasonably strong weather system producing widespread gusts of 35 to 50 miles per hour, with localized gusts exceeding 50 over high terrain. And NIFC's own conclusion, not mine, is that widespread critical to locally extreme fire weather conditions can be expected. That is the agency's own wording. Critical to locally extreme. Take it seriously. The reason this is so dangerous comes down to 2 words: dry front. When a normal cold front passes, you get wind and you get rain, and the rain helps. A dry cold front gives firefighters all of the wind that tears apart their containment lines and none of the moisture that would help them fight back. The temperature drops, the wind arrives, and the rain never comes. It is the single most dangerous fire weather setup there is, and it's the one that's forecast. The wind builds Saturday, peaks Saturday night as the front moves through, and strong westerly winds continue into Sunday across the northern Rockies and northern Great Basin. Multiple National Weather Service offices, Missoula, Great Falls, Billings, Boise, Pocatello, have issued coordinated fire weather watches across Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington through the weekend. And there's a cruel twist for Washington specifically. Western Washington is actually getting rare early August rain this weekend from an offshore system pushing marine air onto the Puget Sound. But that same system drives strong westerly winds east over the Cascades into exactly the zones where Kaiser Canyon and the other eastern fires are burning. The rain falling on Seattle does nothing for the fires. Eastern Washington stays critically dry and now gets the wind on top of it. On the numbers, NIFC forecasts minimum relative humidity between 3 and 15% for much of the interior west. 3% humidity is near the lowest reading instruments can even register outdoors. At that level, fine fuels become explosive and any spark can run. Across the inland northwest, humidity drops to 10 to 20% during peak Saturday and Sunday afternoons, paired with those 35 to 50 mile per hour winds. 10 to 20% humidity and 50 mile per hour gusts on cured fuel, next to 40 plus uncontained fires. That's the whole equation, and none of the terms are in your favor. None of this came from nowhere, and the reason it's this bad this early is worth understanding. 8 western states set record low snowpack on April 1st this year. In Washington, the snow was essentially gone by late June, around 3 weeks ahead of normal. Snowpack is the West's slow-release water supply. When it melts early, the wildland fuels dry out early, and the fire season starts weeks ahead of schedule and hits harder when it does. That's why fires are behaving in late July and early August the way they normally would at the season's deepest, driest point. The calendar hasn't reached the historical peak yet. Year to date, roughly 44,000 fires have burned about 4.8 million acres nationally, around 128% of the 10-year average for fire count, and 133% for acreage. And NIFC's own outlook is blunt. No significant rain is expected across Pacific Northwest fire zones this coming week. Only isolated afternoon mountain thunderstorms that can spark new fires through dry lightning. Above normal wildfire risk is forecast to persist through early fall. This does not resolve in days. If you are anywhere in the fire regions of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, or Montana, here are the action items straight from fire management officials before this wind event peaks. Register for your county's emergency alert system tonight. Okanogan, Wasco, Harney, Malheur, Owyhee, if you haven't already. Do it now, not Saturday. Know your evacuation level. Level 1 means be ready. Level 2 means be set to leave at a moment's notice. Level 3 means go now, immediately, do not wait. Because in a fast-moving, wind-driven fire, emergency crews cannot guarantee they'll reach your door in time. Keep your gas tank full every night. In a fire emergency, stations along evacuation routes may be closed or overwhelmed. Have a go bag by the door. Medications, copies of important documents, water, and 72 hours of supplies. And do not create new ignitions. Check fire restrictions before any outdoor activity. Equipment sparks, from trailer chains dragging on pavement, from exhaust systems, from off-road vehicles, have started fires this season. In a weekend forecast to hit 3% humidity and 50 mile per hour gusts, a single spark can become the next 100,000-acre fire. Every human-caused ignition pulls firefighters off the fires already burning. To close, the country is at preparedness level 5, the highest it goes. Around 84 large fires burning uncontained. 4.8 million acres gone so far this year. 30 large fires in Oregon, 11 in Washington, the bench fire at 65,000 acres, Big Grass at over 300,000, Kaiser Canyon near 130,000, and a major unseasonably strong dry wind event landing Saturday night, confirmed by NIFC and echoed by fire weather watches across 4 states. This is a developing situation. The next 48 hours, when that front moves through, will tell us how much worse it gets before it gets better. If this was useful, subscribe and turn notifications on. But mostly, think about the 26,000 personnel on these fires tonight, the 70-plus international specialists who crossed the Pacific to help, and the crews whose own leadership says their biggest fear is simply getting them home safe. Check your alerts, know your zone, and take care of each other out there.